guys, it's Melissa and welcome back to my channel. I'm gonna warn you guys now, this case is so twisted and complicated that I've stopped recording like 15 times because I keep losing track of where I'm at because it's so twisted. So today's case is going to be on Maddie McCann. Maddie McCann was an almost 4-year-old little girl who was taken from her bed in Portugal. She was on vacation with her family from the UK, and literally, this little girl would be 16 here in a couple months, and nobody has any idea what happened to her. They have no idea if she's alive, if she's deceased, where she is, who did it, nothing. This is it's so twisted. So what I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna try to do like background facts, what we know about the case that seems to be facts, and then pretty much it's just kind of gonna be a rambling of theories because it's crazy. So let's try to stick to the facts because I find myself getting distracted because I get so frustrated by just the beginning of how this even happened. But I'm gonna try and keep my opinions to myself for a minute. Let's just go ahead and cover the facts. Okay, so the parents are Kate and Gerry McCann, and they were married in 1989. They were both physicians, and they were trying to conceive a child. Apparently it was kind of an issue, and they did do, I believe it was 5 years of IVF treatment in order to get pregnant. In 2003, actually May 12th of 2003, they welcomed their first child, which was Madeline Beth McCann. And then in 2005, they welcomed twin boy-girl, Sean and Emily. So this family was a successful family with a decent amount of money. They seemed to do very well, both doctors. I laugh when everyone says oh, they must have been great. They were doctors. Just so y'all know, I've read some stories about some doctors. They ain't always great and they're not always rich. I have seen some broke ones. So, but it does appear that this family financially was doing well and that they were a great family and they had their 3 children. So in 2007, they were on family holiday, as they refer to it in the UK, vacation as we refer to it in the US, and they took their 3 children and they lived in England and they went to Portugal for vacation. Now, vacation. I'm familiar with when you travel to a foreign country that you usually typically stay in some sort of enclosed resort where you are kind of secured safety wise from the country's elements of locals. Okay, so it doesn't mean it's in a bad area or anything. It just means that when you travel and you're not familiar, you kind of want to be in a closed area where you know that you can go to with questions and security and eating and shopping and things like that. You kind of know where you're at. So this was kind of a resort. It had a resort-esque where there was a pool, there were apparently tennis courts and a front desk and a restaurant. So this all was there, but they were actually staying in what were apartments. And these apartments were kind of individually owned, maybe an Airbnb, but they were not in a hotel where they had a gate around them. They were actually, the apartment they were on was street level, and it did have some stairs, but they weren't, it wasn't they were up high or anything, but it had some stairs and they could go out the front door of their apartment. They put a baby gate. I just want to cover this because I saw somebody who did not have children do a story on this, and they're oh, there was a baby gate. Okay, my grandson is 4, and I'm telling you right now, he can literally undo that thing and carry it away. So yes, kids can undo baby gates, especially at 4. Literally, I stopped using a baby gate for my kids at about 1.5 years because by then they were just going right over it. So there was a baby gate, and then you would go downstairs and there was a low gate that you would open. But literally, once you did that, you were on the street right out in Portugal, okay? So here's what the family was doing. So they were staying at this resort apartment situation, and during the day they were taking the kids to kids club where the kids could hang out and do activities. They picked them up at lunch, and this is what they did on that particular day of May 3rd of 2007. So they dropped off the kids, they picked them up for lunch. This is actually where the last seen photograph was taken of Maddie when they were at the pool. And then they returned the kids to the kids club, carried on with their adult activities, I believe tennis, spa, that kind of thing. And then they would return around 5 or 6, pick up the children, and then have dinner with them. I kind of read, I wasn't sure if they had dinner with them or the kids club fed the dinner, and then pretty much all they did was bathe the kids. But then they put the kids to bed. I'm gonna save my opinion for later. Okay, so then they would put the kids to bed and then they would meet their friends for dinner. Now, on this vacation, they were traveling with some of their other friends. These were other doctors and these were other people, and they even had their children with them. And this was kind of a routine of what they would do. They would then put the kids to bed and then they would meet their friends for dinner. Yeah, they like, when I say they like put their kids to bed and went to dinner, like that's what they did. Like there was no babysitter, there was no daycare. They didn't take them back to the kid care, which by the way did have evening hours. They put the kids to bed and then left them in the apartment and went to dinner. Now, Gerry McCann explained it as similar to dining in your garden. So I had to think about this. I remember a time when my next door neighbor and I were really great friends, and she and I would like meet out in the front yard and we would like hang out after the kids went to bed. But like we took a baby monitor with us. That was like our mom time. So I get it. Like I'm totally fine with you like stepping out a little bit and kind of trusting your children. But like I had a baby monitor. Like I could hear my kid. And I was only 20 feet away. So they were actually going to the restaurant, which I'm going to say it was about 200 feet away. If you did the bird's eye from the building to the restaurant, I believe it was quoted at 185 feet. And if you did the complete walk around, because obviously you can't bird's eye. If you did the walk, which was go out the door, go around the building, come back and go through to get to the restaurant, then I believe it was like 295 feet. So let's just say it's 200 feet walk, because what they were doing is they were actually using their back patio door, coming out of it and cutting through the pool to get to the restaurant. That is nothing like dining in your garden unless you have a mansion. And then at that point, like get a baby monitor. I wouldn't leave my kid that far, because my thought, you know what, I'm gonna digress. I'm not gonna go off on this because this is where I get caught every time because I get so frustrated. This is what they did. It's also important to note that from where they would sit at the restaurant, which I'm gonna explain now, they could see the top of their apartment, but they could not see the doors. So what they would do is they would leave that back door unlocked, because you could only lock it from the inside, and they didn't want to have to go all the way around to the front, which was what caused the most amount of time to go to the front door. So they were just leaving the back sliding glass door unlocked so that they could go in and out to check on their children. And then the spot that they would sit at the restaurant, they actually made a very specific request. So I do see all of these things, like they were trying to, leave the door open so they could get there faster, they could get to the closest spot. They tried to sit at the restaurant in a spot where they could see the apartment, but they could only see the roof. You can't see the door. They also made a point to tell the hostess that this was super important to them, that they could see their apartment, because they were all leaving their children asleep alone in the rooms and they wanted to be able to see it. Yeah, that was like right there in the book at the restaurant, like, the big book that's out, and they write in it for anyone to see that they were leaving their children alone. Like this might have been, I would have said, please don't write that down, but that's just me. So what had happened is they were all checking on their children every half hour. Okay. So again, there are a lot of things they were trying to do. Did it ever dawn on them? If you have to make this many attempts to try to keep an eye on your kids, does it not dawn on you that you're doing something that's not safe for your kids? If you have to put this many safety measures in place, maybe just take your kids to the kid care. And I guess they said the reason they didn't take their kids to the kids care is because their kids were in a routine and they just didn't want to mess up the routine on vacation. Okay, this is also something that needs to be mentioned as well. The morning that this happened, Maddie actually said to her parents, "Why didn't you come last night when I was crying for you?" And I believe she mentioned her and her brother Sean were crying. Why didn't you come? The neighbor upstairs noted that the children had cried for about an hour and a half. So when I get to this next point, it's going to kind of make you wonder what the schedule was really like. So their plan was, when they were at the restaurant, all of the parents went back every half hour to check on their child. You remember the night before, She cried for an hour and a half and nobody came. So anyways, their plan was to check on their child every half hour. They arrived at the restaurant around 8:30. Gerry did the first check at 9 o'clock. He said he went back to the apartment. He checked on the children and everything seemed pretty fine. He did note that the door to the bedroom seemed more open than it was when he left. It could have been from Maddie getting up to check on them and look for them. But when he went in there, he noticed that all 3 children were asleep and everything was fine. He even took time to note how beautiful Maddie looked. Now, he returned back and everything moved along. The next check would be at 9:30. Kate did get up to go do the check, and a friend of theirs said, don't worry about it. I'm going to check on my children right next door. I will peek in and check on your child as well. Now, that friend did say that he did go to their apartment. He did open the door. He did look in, but he wasn't able to state specifically that he actually saw Maddie there. He just said everything was quiet and everything was fine. I don't know if he just kind of opened the door and I don't hear any crying, so everything's fine. Or maybe just honestly, if you ever looked in a room and then you're like, oh wait, you were in there? I forgot. You know what I mean? Like it happens. So, but it's really important because this can change a lot of timelines around. The next check would be at 10 o'clock and that was Kate's check. Now, Kate did get up and she did return to their apartment to check on the children. When she came in, she noticed the same, that the bedroom door seemed more open than it originally was. And in fact, when she reached for it, a draft caught the door and slammed it shut. She opened the door and immediately noticed that the window was open. She claims the window was not open prior. The window was open prior and Maddie was missing. Sean and Emily were fine, but Maddie was not there. She immediately left the apartment, left the twins there, and ran all of the way back to the restaurant screaming, she's gone, someone's taken her. I mean, I don't mean to be so dramatic, like add like this big long pause or anything, but I mean, honestly, I don't understand. Like I search the apartment, search outside, start banging on walls, grab your babies, your twins, grab them, hold them and run with them because I would take them with me. Like you think your child was, I can't. You think your kid was kidnapped and then you leave your other 2 children to be kidnapped? Like what are you thinking? But again, that's just me. And you know, I'm just building this channel and I really don't want to get shut down. I'm really glad I'm not like a big YouTuber when I cover this because the books alone that have been shut down that try to cover this case, you go on Amazon and the only book you can find is Madeline. Beautiful book written by Kate McCann. So any other book that even supports their theory or goes against their theory of what happened to her is not even on Amazon. Like, who do you know? Like, honestly, to get this to happen. Because if my child ever goes missing, I'm hiring your people because apparently they can just walk through walls and get things done. But I digress again. I'm going to try keep my opinions to myself. I do like the Christmas pajama pants because they were comfortable. So, moving forward. Now, at this time, I'm just going to be straight up honest. Everyone messed up. And I think this is going to be common when you're dealing with just this like completely bizarre event. This little girl is just taken from her room and in Portugal, and they're not from Portugal, and it's like a big old mess that happened, unfortunately. So the crime scene was not secured by the Portugal police like it should have been. There were people in the apartment, there were people around. The searches did happen, and they did do marine searches because the ocean was nearby. They did do air searches, they did do dog searches, but they were not done properly. They weren't done fast enough. Roadblocks were apparently not set up till the next morning, but some people said they were. Like, it was a mess. Portugal did not have a good plan for dealing with this, and they've been honest about it since, that they messed up, they made mistakes. I can't not mention this. During the search, that initial search, when they're trying to find this little girl, because remember, the night before she asked her mom and dad, why didn't you come when I cried for you? She could have wandered out. This is 100% an absolute possibility that little girl could have gone out the door. And everyone's like, her parents like, well, I just don't think so. This could happen. So in this moment, these first couple of hours I just want to ask you, what are you doing as a parent? Because the McCanns were in their apartment. They were sitting in their apartment, preparing to go on the news. Okay, so you're like, okay, that's fine. Like, they're preparing for the news. They're going to get the word out there. I wouldn't be able to stop searching. I would be like preparing in my head, I guess, and like whatever. But like for these hours, they're preparing. The Portugal police said, do not go on the news. Do not go on the news. This is the worst time. Do not go on the news. If someone has taken her, you go on the news. They're going to freak out. They're going to kill your little girl. They went on the news anyways. They also told them she had a very distinct mark in her eye. And everyone has heard of this. The police will ask you to withhold certain information. They asked them, do not talk about this little mark in her eye. It's very rare and it would make it very easy to identify her. Don't talk about it. They went straight on the news and talked about it. Okay, so their side is, I'm in a foreign country. I don't know anyone and my little girl is missing. So I'm going to blast everything I can onto the news to get attention so that my little girl can be found. Okay. I'm going to take both sides on that one. I just don't understand why you weren't searching, because you don't know where your little girl is. Why are you not out on the street screaming her name? Just feel like she might have been closer than the news cycle. That's just me. Now, one of their friends that was dining with them returned to check on her child around 9:15-ish. And when she was checking on her child, she actually saw Gerry standing on the sidewalk talking to another person that he had known from the trip, not dining with him, but another person. And he had come back from his 9 o'clock check, ran into the friend, and they were standing there talking. This friend of theirs was checking on her child, actually crossed them. Now, they didn't see her, but she said she saw them. And because everything's confusing, she said that when she was walking, so she's going down the corridor and she sees a gentleman walk kind of like in front of her, and she says she sees him carrying a small blonde child in pink pajamas. Okay, so you're like, oh my God, that's him, right? But now what's interesting is she said that she thought that because everyone assumed Maddie had just wandered off, that it wasn't worth mentioning because she didn't want to scare a friend with the fact that her daughter might have been kidnapped. Let me just remind you that Kate's very first words were she's been taken, and rather than looking around the apartment for her, she went straight to the news media to report that her daughter had been kidnapped, was calling home to friends and family, my daughter's been kidnapped. So like there wasn't a lot of time of Kate thinking that her daughter had wandered off. So you might have wanted to tell your friend that you think you saw who took her daughter. But she didn't say that until days later. I also heard that she initially couldn't identify the man, but then later on she could suddenly do a full sketch with full detail. Then I heard that another family, which was like the Smith family, saw the same thing, and they thought that it was also interesting that they saw a guy carrying a child. But then the Portugal police came out later and said that they found that person, and it was a gentleman from Ireland who was there on vacation as well, and that he was just picking up his child from the childcare, you know, that childcare that was available. But then other people say, no, that's not true. That's not who it was. They didn't identify. It's a mess. The thing is that we don't know because she's gone. There's no cameras. There's no video footage of this gentleman taking her. She's just gone. So that was one theory that kind of gave some validity to the fact that she might have been kidnapped. There was a lot that went on in this story that got confusing though. At some point, the McCanns actually were part of bringing some dogs from the UK to Portugal. So there were two dogs. One was a dog that was trained to scent cadavers. So basically the scent of death. And the other dog was to sniff the smell of blood. These dogs, okay, so here's the thing. So when I was reading about the dogs, because they got a couple of really weird hits, I thought, okay, well, this happens. Like, dog science can't be completely perfect. But then I went back and did research on these two specific dogs. These two specific dogs had never been wrong, and they'd never had their evidence thrown out in a court case. It's kind of crazy. And they found the scent of death in the apartment of where the family had been staying. I believe it was in the bedroom and behind the couch. They also found the smell of blood. They found, this is so sad, but the scent of blood and death was mixed between Maddie's belongings, her shirt, her little stuffed animal that was left behind, there was also on the rental car, but the rental car they didn't get until afterwards, so I don't know if that was transferred them belongings. So here's what everyone is curious. This was dismissed, of course, by the McCanns. They're like, no, that's not possible. Like that, the dogs are wrong. Like, I believe Gerry was even, I saw a clip where they asked him, like, what do you think about the dogs? And he's like, I don't know, ask the dogs. Like, what are they going to do? Put them on trial? Like, really? Like, I don't know. Like, that's dumb. Like, it didn't happen. And so the theory from some people who have really looked into this case is one of two things happen. Maddie was taken by an intruder from the apartment and she's gone, okay? A lot of people who have a lot more knowledge than I do in, criminology have said that this case was highly publicized. So if this little girl was taken, the chances are that unfortunately she's not alive anymore. And that's a scary thing to think. I know there's been so many great stories of people being found. But this case, with it being so highly publicized, she does have a distinctive mark to her. It's really scary to think that she's probably not alive. The other theory is that something happened to her inside of the apartment. I will say this, there are not very many people who come forward and say that they believe that Kate and Gerry killed their daughter. They don't believe that they did. There just didn't seem to be, there's some weird things about them, but it didn't seem to be that they would want to murder their daughter. They seem to love her. They seem to be very happy to have children. But they do believe that something happened to her. So maybe an accident. There's questions about, did they maybe give her a dosage of something to help her sleep since the night before she had awoken? And then people are like, oh no, that can't be possible because they're doctors. They would know what they were doing. Yeah, but they're doctors who know what they're doing. So they would also be the ones that would be like, oh no, it's fine. You can give her a double dose. Like, I know it's fine. I don't know though, because there's absolutely no proof of that because unfortunately Maddie's never been found. So at this point, there's a lot of theories of what happened to her, and there's a lot of people who strongly believe that something happened to her inside of the apartment, and that the man seen carrying the child might have actually been Gerry or someone, a friend of theirs. There's a lot of people who believe that this was a crazy cover-up by the friends who helped protect them, which led to the idea that maybe it was an accident, so they were willing to help them. But again, it's all just theories. But there's also a lot of people who talk about, there's no way. I've seen the amount of money that the McCanns have spent on trying to find Maddie, so obviously they want to find her. I just want that, if you believe that theory, I want you to go do the research on where this money came from and how they actually spent it. So the last number I saw was in the range of like 11 million pounds. I believe it's about 19 million US dollars. We are talking millions and millions of dollars. Now, this money actually came from a trust, from donations. So that money has to be spent on that. I mean, there were reports that they actually paid off their mortgage with part of this money. And that was highly known. And they did that so that they could spend more time working on finding her, I'm assuming. So I guess that's why they used those funds. But this money is all money that was donated and given to them to find Maddie. Now, they've also written a book about Maddie. They've appeared on numerous television shows and given numerous interviews and articles. As well as that, they hired a PR consultant. So if you're familiar with, like, I think like on the show Scandal, a cleaner, someone who comes in after a crisis and helps manage the crisis. So I could see and play on their side as well, because I could see how this would be important, right? So if you are in the public eye, and in 2007, I believe it was June or July, the McCanns were actually named as suspects in the disappearance of their daughter by the Portugal police. So I could see how the idea of hiring someone to change your image so that the world quits focusing on you as a suspect and starts focusing on the locating of your daughter. Okay, so I can get that. Like, that does make sense to me, but I don't understand the long-term game plan that they did with this consultant. They paid him millions of dollars. Like, this is a high-end publicist. Millions of dollars to help with their public image. And I don't understand how that helps them find their daughter. I could understand how it helps get the attention off of them as suspects so that their focus can go back to finding their daughter. But like, I don't understand long term how that continuously keeps helping find your daughter. Like, let it go, be a suspect. I don't care. Like, it just work, focus on finding your daughter. So, and I'll add this in. So if you want to do any research on why I call him like a crisis manager, PR consultant, his name is Alex Woolfall. And he works with a British PR firm. So, but part of his strategy, and I believe this came from him because they hired him pretty quickly, and this was a strategy they said they employed, is one of the things, if you go back and you watch any interview ever, any book, any article, any video, the McCanns never talk about Maddie in a personal way, about her personality, about her hobbies, about things she liked, about what a goofy kid she was or a funny kid she was. I can go into details about my kids. My oldest son is 17 years old, and I can tell you all of his little quirks when he was a little boy. Like, I can tell you everything. I'm a mom. They never talk about it. They never break their face. They never break tears. They're very stern, to the point. And they were coached that the best way to avoid inciting the captor of their child was to stay very non-emotional and to almost talk about her as kind of like an asset. She was beautiful. She had a perfect face. She was symmetrically amazing. Because that just creeps me out. Like, you know, she's a little girl. Talk about her. She's beautiful, but come on. They talked a lot about what she looked like and not a lot about what she was like. But in their defense, if this was the strategy they were given to try to help them with locating their daughter, then I understand. If that's what they thought was best, then by all means, that's what they should do, right? Okay, sorry guys, I had to do a light change, so if things look a little different, I'm really working on trying to get things better, set up little things out of my living room, trying to make the office feel a little more home, but I don't know what I want to put in here yet, so just bear with me on that one. So basically at this point, the leads that are on Maddie are just really difficult to sort through. The man that may or may not have been seen walking, may or may not have been a tourist. There were even people that when they looked at the sketch said it actually kind of looked like Gerry McCann. There was also a guy that lived down the street that inserted himself into the investigation as an interpreter. He was named as a suspect at one point in time, but then he was really, cleared of all suspect because he had an alibi and it didn't make any sense. There was some connected, I don't want to get myself into some weird stuff. So there was a guy down the road who was connected and he had been accused of molestation in the past, and the McCanns talked to him at some point in time. So there was this theory that it gets really dark and twisted, and I'm not even go much further than that because I genuinely could not find one thing that made me think that the McCanns purposely harmed their child. But I don't know. It really seems like something happened because of the way that they reacted. Their initial reaction was somebody stole her. Don't get me wrong. I do worry if I can't find my child for 3 seconds. I think, oh my God, somebody took him. But my actual reaction is to search for them because I assume they've wandered off. So, I mean, that's just kind of weird. The way that they've like been so vehemently mad at anyone who thinks that they had anything to do with it. And not just your normal, like, whoa, I'm not a suspect, like, find my child. They've gone out of their way to make sure that no other books can be on Amazon except for theirs. They've gone out of their way to block content and block videos and really, and they say that it's to focus on the investigation on finding Maddie, but like you're using money and resources to worry about what somebody's writing. Like that doesn't matter what they write because that's not stopping you from finding your child. What would help you find your child is more time spent in the area where your child went missing. But that's just me. It's just my opinion. It's just what I think. I am 100% shocked at their decision to leave their child alone in the apartment. I consider myself to be, you know, my first child. I was like a helicopter mom. Like, I don't think he got to breathe without me knowing what he was doing. So, like, I know for sure with him, I can't even, like, I barely would go to my car. Like, I was really that parent. With my second child, so he's 9, there's a big age gap, and I'm that typical second mom that, like, you know, the first child has, like, the big old baby book, and the second child has, like, he does have one. I think it's kind of half done. Anyways, but you know what I mean? So I'm a little more lenient with the second child. You know, yes, I told you the story about how me and my friend would go sit kind of in the front. We would meet up and we would, you know, have a drink and chit chat with each other while our kids were right inside with the baby monitors. I lived in an apartment complex at one point in time, and I had a friend who lived right there, and we would sit out on our patio, hang out, chit chat, and the kids would be inside. So like, I'm not non-understanding the fact that you don't have to stand on top of your child 24 hours a day, but like there's technology, and there was technology in 2007. They were baby monitors. They had been around for a very long time. My child was born in 2002, so your child was born in 2003. I know what you could have done to, you know, be more careful. And I appreciate that you have a great schedule with your kids and you don't want to use daycare to mess up their schedule, but bring a nanny. There's an option. Why didn't you guys all figure this out? Get together. You guys could have done one nanny in one room for all the kids to sleep in. You could have just redid your schedule when you got back home. Like, how important are you? But those are all just my opinions, by the way. I don't want to get in trouble. Like, I'm just like this brand new YouTube channel, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to make YouTube videos. And they're like, oh, you're shut down because you reported on a case you shouldn't have. But I think it's really important that we talk about this. You be careful with your children. Keep them close. Keep where you can hear them, where you can see the exit that they can go out of. Stay closer to your children. It's not worth it. So those, you know, 4 nights that they got away with having dinner while their kids sleeping, was it worth it for the one night that their child is gone? It's not. So I will finalize this. Do I think that the McCanns murdered their daughter and covered it up? No, I do not think that they murdered their daughter. Do I think that there is a chance that she, something happened to her by accident and that they used their friends to cover it up so that they would not get in trouble? There was the ocean nearby. There was the people they knew that could have helped them. Yeah, I think it's a really big possibility. They have been removed as suspects by Portugal, which I find very interesting because I just kind of, every case I've ever seen, until the body's found or until there's irrefutable evidence, you stay listed as a suspect. Now, you might not be like the top interest suspect that they're like following around and like checking your whereabouts, but like you stay a suspect. I haven't seen anything that tells me to remove them other than they have a lot of money in that trust to get rid of that suspicion. Do I think that somebody could have broken into the apartment and taken her? Absolutely. They left the back door open. Absolutely. There is nothing you can tell me that couldn't have happened. Yeah, it's very confusing about what time it might have happened at and who would have done it. That I don't know at all. But yeah, absolutely, 100%. Somebody could have walked right in there and took that little girl. Do I think that she could have wandered off? Absolutely. Same thing. You left an unlocked door that you couldn't see. She was 4 years old. The night before, she had been crying, wanting you, and you didn't come to help her. So could she have wandered out to try and find her parents? Absolutely. Does that mean she could still be alive? I mean, it's possible. The only possibility is that somebody took her in as a family and she doesn't know. I mean, there are worse fates that could have happened. There's been claims that there's been sightings of her in different countries. So yes, she could be trafficked. It's horrible to think. It's just not likely given the research that everyone has done on human trafficking cases. A 3-year-old in their bed and a highly publicized case like this just doesn't seem to be the victimology that is normally followed for a human trafficking case. So I'll leave you with this. I think these parents have been beat up often enough. Okay, I get it. I wish that they would be more upfront about it and be like, we should have never done that. That was a horrible decision. We made that decision out of being naive and just assuming that it was fine and treating a situation like we were at home when we were not. But I'm not going to judge them just because they don't say what I want them to say, which is what I would say, which is, oh my God, I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. Oh, I should have never done that. That's horrible. So they're just different. They're just kind of like, no, we were fine. This is what we did. It was like our garden, like, you know, kind of nonchalant about it, but that's their prerogative. That doesn't mean that they're guilty. So hug your children, hug your loves, hug your babies, like take care of them, protect them, keep them safe. It is just such a precious time. It goes by so fast. I know every other mom out there is like, I know. So hug them, love them, take care of them, keep them safe, always prepare for situations and be aware of what's going on around you. Thank you guys so much for watching and y'all have a great day.